After the truce broke down, Israel pulled out of talks in Cairo. So what happens next for each side? We're joined by Ambassador William Taylor. He is the Vice President for the Middle East and Africa at the United States Institute of Peace. He's also a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. And as long as I'm reading from your bio, I was just mentioning you served in Jerusalem as the U.S. government's representative to the Mideast Quartet, which facilitated the Israeli disengagement from Gaza and parts of the West Bank. They need you over there now. It's not a job that most people would relish. Talk to me about being involved in that thicket, trying to get both sides to come together. What do you think was the breakdown in Cairo?
The breakdown in Cairo was the cessation of the ceasefire. So that then, when the Palestinians began to fire, the ceasefire expired, Palestinians began to fire, the Israelis responded. That was the breakdown. We have to somehow get back to that ceasefire. You mentioned the time that I had working for Jim Wolfenson as part of the quartet, and we were negotiating between the Israelis and the Palestinians on a withdrawal from Gaza at the time. It can be done. The Israelis and Palestinians, if they want the same thing, and in this case, they probably do. A ceasefire would be good for both of them. So it's that kind of negotiation that has to take place.
I was speaking to somebody, another analyst yesterday, who said, you know, after this many casualties, Hamas needed to come away with something, and the easing of the blockade obviously was what they really wanted. What stands in the way of that?
Distrust on both sides. Certainly the Israelis, again, in 2007, agreed to open the Rafah crossing to enable goods and people to go across. There was trust then based on Europeans being there and American cameras being there. So something that can help build the trust is what's necessary. Today, that trust is not there. So the Israelis are concerned that if they open up Rafah or other crossings, that more weapons, more materials that will build tunnels will come through. It's that lack of trust that we have to somehow, that they have to somehow get across.
Well, you've sat in on these sessions. The level of distrust, you mentioned to me, it undulates. How do you get it to come back down, ratchet it down?
Both sides have to want to stop the fighting. Both sides have to want to stop the killing of their citizens and of the other side's citizens. That's a common desire. Then there is the possibility that the Egyptians or the UN or maybe the Americans or some can come in and help both sides get to a place where they can agree. The Israelis want security. They want security from protection from firing rockets at their homes. The Palestinians want an opening to the world. Those are not incompatible, but the lack of trust right now makes them incompatible.
Well, let's just take a step back in time. Secretary of State John Kerry said, I've got this 9-month plan, no leaks, we're going to get this thing done. And now we're seeing this fighting. What happened in that march to peace that actually ended up in fighting?
There was some progress during that time, during the negotiations. They were very quiet on both sides, no leaks, as you say. There were some agreements that they were approaching agreements. But then you had probably extremists on both sides. You certainly had extremists that killed 3 Israeli teenagers. We recall that. Then there was a revenge killing by probably settlers against a Palestinian. That is the kind of thing that just will derail a negotiation.
It just ignites things.
It ignites.
And now we see what we're seeing today.
That's exactly right.
Ambassador, thanks so much for coming in. Certainly appreciate it.